Well, the excitement and anticipation in the room hit a new high at 10:32 a.m. She entered wearing all black, as if on her way to a funeral. The loose-fitting, plain black clothing draping from her shoulders to her toes suggested the modesty of a nun. The makeup was minimal, the way she and the other moms in her neighborhood might look when shopping at the local grocery store. The long blonde hair held up with a clip at the back of her head, the way it might be in a utilitarian way while she was doing dishes or checking one of the horseshoes on her horse she later spoke of so proudly. When she walked by him, her face had the same expressionless, somber look that all the jurors always have when they walk by him, looking at the floor. She didn't look at him. The first time they were in a room together, his bodyguard was standing outside the door. This time, his bodyguards were much closer. She was alone in the room with him that first time. This time, there were over 100 people in the room, all watching her, except him. He didn't look at her. When she sat down, a court officer said, quote, "Pull your chair up to the microphone and state your first and last name and spell your name for the record." The witness, ready? "My name is Stormy Daniels. Last name is Daniels. The court, "All right. Good morning, Ms. Daniels." The witness, "Thank you." The court, "You may inquire." Direct examination by Susan Hoffinger. Question, "Good morning, Ms. Daniels." "Good morning." Answer, "Hi." Question, "Ms. Daniels, have you also been known as Stephanie Clifford?" Answer, "Yes." Question, "What name do you prefer that we use here in court?" Answer, "Stormy Daniels." In the next couple of minutes, we learned that she was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Quote, "My parents split up when I was 4 years old. I was mostly raised by mom, very low income family. She was a single working mom. I went to a private, very Christian, very strict elementary school that my dad paid for. I was editor of my high school paper, so I was in the journalist club. She was in a room filled with journalists, many of whom were probably editors of their high school newspapers, but there the similarity ended between her and anyone else in that room. She described the beginning of her career as what she called an exotic dancer and said, quote, "The people who make the most for their appearances were the people the girls, performers who had done adult films. And so she acted in her first adult film, along with a girlfriend of hers." Quote, "I will cut out all of the other details, and 5 days later, she got on a plane to fly back home, and I got offered a contract at Wicked Pictures." Prosecutor, "And how old were you at the time?" Daniels, 23. 4 years later, she was at a celebrity golf tournament in Nevada where the adult film company Wicked Entertainment was sponsoring one of the holes on the golf course. Question, "And did you meet Donald Trump on the golf course at that celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe?" Answer, "Yes, I did." Question, "Can you describe how you encountered him on the golf course?" Answer, "It was a very brief encounter. The players were playing. They came through very quickly. We met every person who was in the golf tournament at the moment. They came through. Obviously, they would take their shot. I would say hello and introduce myself to them. I introduced myself, the company, and the other contract girls, not just to Mr. Trump, but every player that came through. Gave them water, posed for pictures. It was a very brief encounter on the course." Every one of the dozens and dozens of golfers that day had a brief encounter with Stormy Daniels at that hole on the golf course. For Donald Trump, the encounter continued today in a Manhattan courtroom almost 18 years later. Donald Trump was the only man on that golf course that day who did something stupid enough to land him in the defendant's chair in a courtroom today for the $130,000 paid to Stormy Daniels to buy her silence about what happened next. That too, she said, was very brief. Donald Trump invited her to dinner, according to her testimony. His bodyguard brought her up to his hotel room to meet there instead of at a restaurant. She testified that she expected to go to a restaurant, and they never did. She wasn't excited about going to dinner with Donald Trump, but her publicist was. Quote, he said, "I think you should go. It will make for a great story. He is a business guy. Like, what could possibly go wrong?" Stormy Daniels told her now familiar story of that evening in the hotel room with Donald Trump, leaving out some of the details that she has included in previous television interviews at the direction of the judge, who tried to keep those details to an absolute minimum. But Donald Trump was apparently bothered by everything he heard in her testimony because the judge held a bench conference with the lawyers in the middle of Stormy Daniels' direct testimony outside of the hearing of the jury, in which the judge told Donald Trump's defense lawyer that Donald Trump had committed contempt of court right there in his chair in the courtroom this morning. The judge: I understand that your client is upset at this point, but he is cursing audibly and he is shaking his head visually, and that's contemptuous. It has the potential to intimidate the witness, and the jury can see that. Mr. Blanche, I will talk to him. The court: so I am speaking to you here at the bench because I don't want to embarrass him. Mr. Blanche, I will talk to him. The court: you need to speak to him. I won't tolerate that. Mr. Blanche, I will talk to him. The court: one time I noticed when Ms. Daniels was testifying about rolling up the magazine and presumably smacking your client. And after that point, he shook his head and he looked down. And later, I think he was looking at you, Mr. Blanche. Later, when we were talking about The Apprentice, at that point, he again uttered a vulgarity and looked at you this time. Please talk to him at the break. Mr. Blanche: yes, I will. Immediately after the lunch break, before the jury was brought back into the courtroom, defense attorney Todd Blanche asked the judge for a mistrial, saying that so much of Stormy Daniels' testimony was, quote, unduly prejudicial, including details like Donald Trump, quote, not wearing a condom. Todd Blanche raised that and said, this has nothing to do with why we're here, that the details of the sexual encounter were, quote, extraordinarily prejudicial, and you can't unring that bell for the jury. The district attorney said the conduct that Stormy Daniels described as a witness was precisely the conduct that Donald Trump was paying to try to hide. The judge noted that he sustained almost all of the Trump lawyers' objections to that testimony, and then said in a very direct professional insult to the Trump lawyers, quote, I was surprised there were not more objections. That was a signal to Donald Trump that his lawyers did not do a good job in that section of the trial. The judge said that he will issue a limiting instruction to the jury to limit what evidence they can use from Stormy Daniels' testimony about those details in reaching their verdict. On cross-examination, Trump defense lawyer Susan Necheles spent a full hour of flat, unrevealing question and answer before ever getting to Stormy Daniels' testimony about having sex with Donald Trump. Susan Necheles used the word pornography several times to describe what Stormy Daniels does for a living. It was all leading to the one point that Susan Necheles wanted to make for the jury. Question: you were looking to extort money from President Trump, right? Answer: false. Susan Necheles did not complete her cross-examination today when the court session ended at 4:24 p.m. She had just begun asking Stormy Daniels about her attempt through her lawyer, Keith Davidson, to sell her story to the National Enquirer during Donald Trump's presidential campaign in June of 2016. Stormy Daniels' answer as to why she was trying to sell her story to the Enquirer was, quote, get the story out and make some money. For most of Stormy Daniels' testimony, she was wearing professorial eyeglasses that created even more of a remove from the image of adult actress. Stormy Daniels will resume her testimony on Thursday morning.